So HTTP usually relies on TCP because, or prefers TCP or works on TCP. I don't know which technical term to use because TCP
it's sent over TCP.
Okay, it's sent over TCP because it's more reliable.
Yeah.
But is it that the UDP, it doesn't use UDP at all, or what?
So when you look at TCP and UDP, it's about which one is more reliable. So TCP is definitely more reliable because in UDP, you're not even sure whether the other party got your message. So it's like I'm sending a message and I'm receiving an acknowledgement.
Okay.
So because I get an acknowledgement, I'm so sure that this request got to the party. But if I have a protocol where I don't get an acknowledgement, I'm not so sure that they even got my message in the first place. Yeah. So that's the essence of it riding over TCP, because TCP is a reliable protocol. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Then what does it mean when it says connection and connectionless? Like UDP is connectionless. What does that mean? And TCP works on connections and is reliable.
Okay, so those are like those are like very close to networking terms.
Okay.
But from a programmer point of view, right? When you make an HTTP call, you are not, if you look at this tip, is stateless.
Yeah.
Stateless in this sense means that when I send the request I sent before doesn't know about the request I'm just sending now. So that one request just goes on its own, and is not connected. I don't know if that makes sense to you.
Yeah, but are you sending the same request using the same browser?
Yes, if I send the same request on the same browser, they are two separate requests as far as HTTP is concerned, and they are not related. So that's what they mean by is stateless. But when they say is not sessionless, it means that you are able to manage all those requests within a particular session. So for instance, I log in. When I'm logged in, you've created a session for me. So within that session, I can send like 100 HTTP requests. Even though each of the requests are different and not related, they are within the same session. Session as in you log in, the same concept of session. Do you get? Now, on the fundamental side, so HTTP then it works like so before I can say that I have an HTTP, I can send an HTTP request and response. Are you with me?
Yes.
There is an underlying layer of TCP connection that would have happened. So it's on top of that TCP connection that my HTTP request will leverage on. So let me put it this way. If you are trying to reach a server, and you're trying to launch google.com. Oh, yes. Perfect example. You want to launch google.com. Now, if you're not connected to the internet, you won't be able to launch google.com, correct? Right?
Yeah.
So for you to be able to launch google.com, there has to be a TCP connection, underlying TCP connection, which is what your internet provides.
Okay.
So when that TCP connection is made, on top of that TCP connection, you can now ride on it and send an HTTP request. So I don't want to go into the whole of networking term. In networking, there's something called layer 1 to 7. So that layer 1 to 7 is different layer that a network request will pass through. So layer 7 is at the application layer, which is what you are seeing. Layer 1 is at the wire. Ultimately, there is a wire where your message will pass through. My baby is saying wire.
Yeah, I kind of get, understand the connection part now. I'm just struggling with this stateless part now. So if I have a connection, which is so like connected, that's the connection part. Okay, so when you say that HTTP is stateless,
Yeah.
which means you can run like different requests concurrently and they're not related to each other.
Exactly. And they don't know each other. So you
Okay,
have
so
to.
Okay, go first.
So you have to. So because they are not related, they are stateless. For you to be able to make sense of that request together as a whole, then you have to create what they call session. So for instance, when I log into my Amazon account, they create a session for me. So every request I make, add to carts, check out of carts, delete, they are all within my session. Do you understand?
Yes.
So somebody else can also be clicking on deleting his own carts and doing whatever he's doing. He is also within his own session. So you can make sense of all my own requests within my session and then make sense of all his own requests within his session. But if the sessions were not there, you know, it's totally not, there's no connection between all the requests. So, and when you start building, you know, applications, then you will understand why you will have to do sessions, either by using session or using cookies. You know, you notice that when you go back to some websites, you're automatically logged in.
Yeah.
Once you've logged in before, they've maintained something in the browser, you know, to keep your session active. It might be in the browser, it might be on their site. So they keep that session active to be sure that you are the same person that is coming back, so they don't log you out. Now, the HTTP request you made then and the one you're just about to make when you came back, they are not related. But because of the session, you know, they can retrieve where you were the last time and then just make you continue from where you stopped. I don't know if you get what I'm trying to explain.
Yes, I do.
By the time you start really, you start hands-on and start building, you now say, oh, now I understand why I have to use session, because HTTP is stateless.
Oh, okay.
Right? If this program were a 3-hour seminar, I can't get to all of this, you know. But I really loved the fact that I have the time to say I'm going deep into this so that you understand what you are building. So when you are making a post request, you know that this post and this get are not related.
Okay.
So that's that. Does anybody has any other question around this, what you've read, you know, or anything that doesn't look very clear? Han, is Han there? Han is not with us. Oh, okay. All right. You wonder I always mention your name. I mean, names just come to me. All right. So I told us to read about post and get. So who can tell me like two differences between post and get very briefly before we go to hands-on code?
Okay, get me first. From what I read, get to request data from a specific resource. Why posts is used to send data to the server.
Yep, correct. Correct. Does anybody do you have another one? There are a lot of them, so I expect that you tell me.
Okay,
like
hello.
Yeah.
So I think for GET requests, you could send parameters via the URL.
So for right now at this stage, you don't think you know. I mean, before you think, but now you've read it, so you know. And what you're saying is correct. So don't say I think.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're correct. So we
but
can
for
send
post requests,
yeah.
But for post requests, you send via the body.
Correct. Correct. Absolutely. Now that statement via the body might not make much sense right now, but don't worry. As it goes on today, it will make sense. Does anybody want to tell me another difference? Yeah, there are quite a number of them, I think. There is the size. Did you read about the size?
Yeah,
So
get
basically,
is limited.
Uh-huh. Did you read about the fact that get requests, there's one that you can store in your cookies, there's one you cannot store in your cookies. There's one that will show up in your browser history, there's one that will not show up.
So get request shows up in browser history. Post doesn't show up in browser history.
Cool. All right, so that's a lot of thing to take in. Then the other thing that I told us to check is HTTP error codes. What does error 201 means?
To create new resource.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is it success or failure?
Oh.
Success or failure?
Success.
Success. What does
Success.
what does 200 means?
Okay.
Okay, yeah, success. Okay. What does 401 means?
Unauthorized.
Unauthorized. Correct. What does 403 means?
Forbidden.
Sorry,
Forbidden.
forbidden. Yep. What does 502 means? I'm not hearing the lady's voice.
Server error.
I'm not hearing the lady's voice. So the guys should not answer me again. I want only the ladies. 400. What does 400 means? Ladies.
400.
400.
Bad
requests. Yeah, correct. Bad requests. So I need you to know these things like you know the back of your hand, because you are going to be using them every other time. So when you are in, so typically, even when I'm not teaching developers, when I'm teaching testers, I teach them all these things, because if you are testing, if you are doing application support, you know, I like people that are grounded. You know, you're not just application support. It's not working. No, yeah, come and fix it too, and then you go and run to the developer. I like people that also understand why things are not working. So if you have a 400, you know it's a bad request. So when they say bad request, do you think that's a problem with the client or with the server?
The server.
The client.
Nope, it's the client, because it's the client that is making requests. So when the request is bad, it's not the server's fault, because he hasn't been able to get a correct message to the server. But when you have 500 internal server error, then you know it's from the server. Are you guys with me?
Yes.
Yeah.
So all those error, when you were reading them, you see that they have different categories. So you'll be making use of those error, because when you are giving response to people, you give them error codes as part of the response. So you see I'm getting a 200. When you get a 200, you will clap. Yay, my request was successful. When you get a 400, you know there's something I'm doing wrong as a client, as a caller. Are you with me? So we'll go through, we'll see how all these error code, you can set all these error code in .NET, and then how you can build your API and then create a response and things like that. So I'm going to share my screen and create a new project. So you can do the same on your side, but not necessarily, we won't use your own project. What we'll do is whatever project we create out of here, we'll make it, I'll put it on GitHub, and then over the week, everybody will build features into the project. So let me use my 2019. So have we all installed Postman?
Yeah.
All right. So if we all have installed Postman, so let me show you some things first. I'll just use some sample APIs.
Yeah, I have.
So, okay. So let me go to this workspace and just, okay. So look at this, look at my Postman. When you are using a get, remember we said get is used to fetch data. So
Yes.
so let me break this down for you, what this means. Now, when you have a URL, now when people say send me the link, let me join the link. As a software engineer, you must understand more than just a link. You must know what is inside the link. Are you guys with me? Now, when you look at this, you know what this means now. This is HTTP. This is the protocol, right? It could be HTTP,
Yes.
it could be HTTPS, it could be FTP, it could be SFTP, right? But for the web, it's HTTP. And then the secured one will be HTTPS. You know it's running on port 80, right? You know that if it's HTTPS, it's running on port 443, right? Good.
Yes.
The next thing you see after this forward slashes is what they call host. Whether it's google.com, whether it's amazon.com, whatever it is, it's called a host, right? And then you see a column, and then the next thing you see is called a port. Are we together?
Yes.
After that port, the next thing you see is called a resource. It's called a resource. So when you say URL, as an engineer, you can analyze it, right? Everybody cannot do that. And when I intentionally say the word engineer because that's your goal, to become a software engineer. So you have to keep saying it to yourself. You know, confession works, except you don't want to be. Confession, confess it, and then it happens. So as you're working towards it, you're also confessing it. So I might be calling people Engineer Maureen, Engineer Ben, Engineer Pascal. So great. So we have a protocol, we have a host, we have a port, we have a resource. So there are some things after these resources, but I'll leave them for now. When you see something like question mark, this, and then you see this equal to this. Yeah. So we get that. I mean, I'm leaving that out for now intentionally. But that is how you break down, you know, the components of a URI. They call it a URI, Universal Resource Indicator. So a URL, a URI. Now, this is a full URL. But this URL, you know, this is a resource. So this is /driver. So we can have /driver, /user, /whatever, and they are all different resource on the same port, on the same host, using the same protocol. So we can also have same resource on a different port, on the same host, on the same protocol. And then we can have same resource on the same host on different protocol. Are you guys picturing what I'm saying? Yeah, are you guys with me?
Yeah.
Okay, so just picture everything I'm saying. You have HTTPS, another host name, a different port, and then a different resource. So let me open a notepad and show you what I'm saying. Come on. So this is what I mean when I'm saying that. So you can have, when I do this, every time you say HTTPS, most of the time you won't say any port again. Because by default, HTTPS works on port 443. Abi, we remember?
Yes.
Most of the time when you say HTTPS, HTTP, you won't say any port again. Because by default, HTTP works on port 80. So when you now have like a different resource, like user, or to do or whatever. Then you can have a custom port, it's fine. You can have this is valid. But most of the time on the internet, you always see this too, right? Because people don't like exposing this. But internally, within your company, you can use all your ports as much as you can. So port number ranges from, I think from 1 to, I can't remember, it's a big number. You can pick any number you like, but there are standard default ports, like 80, like 443, like 21, like 23. Like, I'm trying to recall, FTP is 21. I can't remember if FTP on my head. Telnet is, what's Telnet? Have we heard of Telnet before?
Not really.
Telnet. I'll give you an assignment on Telnet. So write it down. Yeah, you can find out what Telnet is for, what they use it to do, and all that. Yeah, so that is our different resources, and now you have a better understanding of this. There is also something called query string. Query string. Anything after your resource is a query string. So you have this question mark, and then you have name equals to, you will have seen some URLs like this, Abby, that will just be full of gibberish, especially all those Microsoft URL. You see the way they just connect. All those things are just resources that they are passing up and down. So there's nothing complex about them. We'll break down everything, especially with this, our Postman is going to help us a lot. So I'm going back to my Visual Studio and let me see how far we've gone in this recording. Okay, I think we have a bit more time. So I'm just going to create a new project. And my new project is going to be a web API. Now, all the projects we've ever created have always been console, and we've worked on console a bit. So we can just, we can do a web API now. So when you go to, so you're supposed to pick ASP.NET Core, web application. So you click on your next, you give it a name. This one is to do API. So to do API is going to create a solution for you, and that's okay. So you click on create. So it's going to ask you that if you're creating an ASP.NET Core web application, number one, what framework do you want to use? Do you want to use ASP.NET Core 3.1 or 2.1? So if you have 3.1, that's what we should be using because that's the latest release now. Not the latest, but there's something called long-term support. So when Microsoft releases their product, they will release something and then they will be updating it gradually. So when they get comfortable, they will release something called long-term support, LTS version. The LTS version, they will be supported for 3 years. So ASP.NET Core 2.1, 3.1, so they are 0.1, they are long-term support version. So when you pick this, so you can pick, so here we can create a web application, we can create, an Angular project, a React project, React and Redux. Don't worry if you don't know what all this means for now. But you should have an idea. Angular is a framework for front end. React is a library for front end. React and Redux is like combination of React and Redux. So Redux is for communication within React. You can use it for other things too, but these are not our focus now. So right now we're creating an API. And I'm going to select this one that has a template, and then we'll delete the things inside and create our own. So when I click on create, Ike, please, 1 minute. All right, let me see if my project is ready. Okay, I think it is. Yep. So this is my landing page. You guys are not new to Visual Studio. You guys are not new to Visual Studio again, so I don't have to, tell you that this is the solution. Inside the solution, this is your project. Now, by default, when I created this API, you can see something called startup. Can you see startup? Remember that when we were having, what's it called? When we were having our console, what's the name of the file where our program starts from? You will remember the name of that class.
Program.cs. Program.cs.
There's a class inside. What's the name of that
Program
class? Program class. Then inside program, there's a method called main. Main method. That's the entry point of our program. So the same way in your API, you can see your program.cs. And inside your program.cs, you can see that main. Can you see it? So, but you won't say console.writeLine, whatever, blah, blah. It does something else. It creates a host builder. Don't worry about this. I will explain everything to you. You might not know them today, but you understand everything. But just take notes. Your program starts from here. It starts from here. So, and then there's something called startup. What the startup does is to wire up all your dependencies. So if you have a database you want to use, this is where you will connect to that database. If you have cache you want to use, this is where you connect the cache. If you want to run on HTTPS, you connect it here. You know, everything you want to do, you do everything from this. I mean, to start up. That's why it's called startup. So this is where your program will start up. You want to pass configuration items, you know, blah, blah, blah. Are we together?
Yeah.
Just follow me.
Yes.
This is getting interesting. And this is where you start to enjoy programming so well. Now, there's things you would not understand here right now. You know, what is iService collection? This is an interface. You don't even know what an interface is right now. Yeah, I know, but don't worry. We'll get there. This is a high web host environment. What is this? But when you go to app settings.json, right, this is where you pass configuration. Configuration items like your database credentials, anything secrets that you don't want to put inside your code, you put them inside here. App settings.json. Any configuration item. So I know Hei is familiar with configuration in other languages, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so in .NET Core, this is where we put configuration items. And we'll be using this a lot to pass a lot of things. It's a JSON file. JSON is JavaScript object notation. It is just a way of, sorry? It's just a way of rendering, is a data file format that is understandable, that is repeatable. So this is what they call JSON. Any file that looks like this, that has, you know, you see these braces, you see the definition, and then you can nest them. You can put one inside the other. You know, for instance, now, if you look at this app, you can see that this is login. So we're defining how will our login work? Inside the login, you now have something called log level. Inside the log level, you now have a default. You have Microsoft, you have this. That's the way we'll compose is a declarative programming. This is just for our settings. And then you see you see a folder called controllers, right? And there's a sample in there called weather forecast controller. Now, there are three things I'm going to mention briefly. I have 8 minutes before the end of this recording. I'm going to mention model view controller. Now, MVC is a design pattern, is the best right now. There's nothing that's beat it so far. So that's where you hear the word controller, model, and then you hear view. Now, when you hear these three things, just keep something at the back of your mind. Model is your entity. And when I say entity, I mean the objects in your API. So for instance, in our to-do API, what are we passing around? We are passing a to-do item, right? When we are fetching to-do
Yes.
lists. When we are creating, we're creating a to-do list. In this kind of scenario, our entity is our to-do. So our to-do can now be a class. It's going to have, to-do item, action name, the date you want to perform the action, whether it's completed or not, all these own properties. But to-do itself is the entity and is what you refer to as the model. Are we together? I mean, you can be taking jottings as well, to write things down so that you don't forget.
Yes.
To-do, so to-do is the action itself right now is our model. Now, when they say a view is what you render, what you display, like what shows up in the browser is a view. And when they say controller, so let me show you what a controller is. Controller is what directs your application to say that this is where it should go. If you look at this code, let me just take this one as a small example. Can you see here? Can you see route? Okay, can you see API controller on top here? Then you can see route. What is so all these things, they call them annotation. Something you had on top of a class to put some specific instruction on that class. So this is the class. The class is called weather forecast. It's inheriting from another class called controller base. Now, you are not new to inheritance, so you know what this means, right? And this class has a method called summaries, right? There's a static read-only method that returns a list, that returns an array of string. This class also has another guy called an highlogger, a property. And then this class has a constructor. You see that the name of this method is the name of the class. That tells you that it's a constructor, right? This constructor takes in an input and then does some things inside the constructor. And then the class also then has a method called get. Now, this method called get also has an annotation on top of it called HTTP get, meaning that this is a route. This route will take in a get. So if I want to build this URL now, the URL that will call this API, I will use the controller. What's the name of my controller here? Weather forecast. So that means this API will be /weather forecast. How do I know it to be /weather forecast? Weather forecast is the name of my controller. So you will ignore this name, this last controller at the end. This is the name. Are we together?
Yes.
So weather forecast is the name of my controller, and I have a method here which is a get, and this method has an HTTP get on top of it, meaning that I can just construct this URL. From this code now, I know that I can do HTTP, whatever the host is. I don't know anywhere I host it. It can be localhost. So let's say it's localhost. So localhost is when you are running it from your system. And let's say it's running on port 80. That means I can have a /weather forecast. Now, when I do /weather forecast, what will happen? This controller will route this request. Once I hit /weather forecast, it's going to route the request to this file because there's a route here for that controller. Now, when he routes it here, this guy will now say that, what did I send? Did I send a get or a post? If it's a get, it's going to come here because of this annotation. Are you guys with me? Don't get confused, please.
Yeah.
If I have another method here and I put a post on it, HTTP post, right? And then I call it posts or post, anything you want to call it. So if I call a get on this URL, when I do a get, it's going to route it to this get. When I do a post, it's going to route it to this post based on the annotations on top. Does that make sense to us?
Yeah.
Now, don't worry yet about what happens inside. Let's understand the routing first. So if I change this guy so I can change this route and just comment this guy out and change it to like, you can do like your own custom route. And instead of doing the controller variable, you just do route to do. So what does route to do? When you have a, sorry, it's commented out. When you have a route to do like this, what does it mean? It means that after specifying your hosts and your ports, the next thing will now be slash to do. So if I do a post on slash to do, once I hit slash to do, so when the web server gets the request, it will look at this URL and say, where should I route this thing? So it's going to first of all look at HTTP, yes. Localhost, yes, I know where localhost is. Port 80, yes, I know where port 80 is. What's the next resource is slash to do. Then you go through your code and say, where is slash to do? It says route to do here. Yes, this is it. Then you will now ask again, after this slash to do, what next? If it was a get you did, you know where it will go to. If it was a post you did, you know where it will go to. Are we together? So that's routing. And I want you to get that clear. So this is the end of this recording. I've covered a number of things, HTTP, post get, routing. So I'll stop this, do the conversion, and then I will start again, and then we'll then continue. So I'm doing this because some people might watch this from YouTube directly and they don't know that's the context. So this is like part A, and then I'll record part B as well. So routing, this is the way routing works. I will explain it again, when we start the next session. And then I will then go to model and then to view. And then we'll go and build our small API. Then that API will build on it in the course of the week. So is that clear to everybody? Are we on the same page, or have I lost somebody? Did I lose